to Retraction. I'm your co-host, Antoine.
I'm your co-host, Jamie. And if you like reversing course through discourse with us, please subscribe. What do you got, Antoine?
Or like, or share.
Yeah, I'm just going to go for the subscribe.
Okay,
just subscribe. Just do that.
We're going for the jugular.
Just make that commitment for us, and you can always unsubscribe. But then you like what you hear, then you could start liking and sharing. But to kind of get to it, it's like anything, right? You got to give it a couple episodes, right? You start a new series, you want to give it at least 3 episodes. At least that's what your friends will tell you.
Right.
Just give us a couple episodes. We'll grow on
I like that. It's a shame because I hope most listeners aren't like me, because the minute someone tells me 83 episodes to get into it, I exit off my list.
No,
I don't watch it. No,
you gotta give things 3 episodes.
Life's too short. Nope, I don't. If you can't grab me in episode 1, you're done.
That's why I don't watch that. That's why I don't watch that physical show.
That's why you didn't watch Physical. Well,
yeah, I dropped off. I dropped out halfway through the first episode.
Physical 100 is not for everyone, but it got me on episode 1. So just love that. The dub, by the way, if anyone's gonna watch Physical 100, don't watch sub, watch dub. It's usually the opposite. For this in particular, the dub is well worth it. So,
all right, Jamie, Antoine, what do you got?
I got a gripe. I got a gripe. Okay, I got a speeding ticket.
Antoine's got some issues driving in his town. The last gripe was about a crosswalk,
stop signs,
right?
Yeah, and that is one
stop
of my
signs.
Other rants.
No, you've done the stop sign. You've done a crosswalk, the raised crosswalk before.
Yep. Can't stand the way suburbia is designed, and
you're having a hard time. Antoine's a city boy, and he is having a hard time.
But this is where I thought you didn't let me get to the surprise. It was going home in the city.
Ooh, you've lost your edge.
That's well.
Actually, maybe you've gotten an edge, maybe, because the city people drive slow.
That's probably why. I think that's more of what happened here.
Yeah,
but I'm gonna tell you about this.
And Antoine's become a better driver, and now the city can't handle him.
Well, I'm definitely driving faster. Jersey people are right up on that bumper. So I'm driving home, and I don't know if you're familiar with where I grew up, but it's on one side is the bay that is to LaGuardia, to JFK, and the opposite side is the ocean. So it's like a beach town, except it's the city. So it was gross when I was growing up, but today it's definitely gotten better. So people,
the smell has subsided.
There was that's a funny story, because a lot of the people moving in today, if they were to ask any of the old, I guess I'm not around anymore, but any of the kids, because the old folks are probably dead by now, if they were asking any of the kids who might have stayed around, and I actually don't know anyone that no one I knew growing up still lives in Rockaway. So, but if there's anyone who's still sticking around that remembers, there is a patch of land that juts out into the JFK Bay, and if you were to look at it today, it's either developed, it either has now housing on it. I know that when I was a kid, they wanted to turn it into a golf course, and it's like it basically looks like a huge mound. So it's like a big moundish area that's jutting out. Think Lord of the Rings, like, it's something you want to go to. Think of like the Elven City. It's not exactly like that, but maybe it's like the Shire. Maybe it's like rolling green landscape kind of thing. I'm trying to get the image in the listener's mind. So
I'm glad you said Lord of the Rings, because I was going with, it sounds like they filled in a garbage dump.
That's exactly what they did do. That's exactly what they did do. That's why it looks though. That's why it is very high, very mountainous, and but now it's full of greenery. And when I was a kid, that was a clear as day dump. You could see from my house the flies around that thing, and on a bad
I can't believe I was right. That's incredible.
On a bad summer day, the smell would definitely waft over the area, which is ironic because my area across from that dump was a nature preserve. So that was what is that? It's not duplicity. It's the duality of the city life.
I was going to say that is just perfect.
Yep.
That's
right. A sanctuary, a little nature sanctuary across the way from a city dump. And that's the thing. The joke, I would definitely egg on this stereotype, because I would never want anyone to know that the area that Rockaway was a dump. So, when we were going to the city, you would make fun of the Staten Island kids. You would say, you live in a garbage town. That's where our trash goes. But maybe I have to apologize to those kids, because I was secretly living with the secret
You were
that we
projecting.
also put the trash in Queens.
Yeah, you were
So,
projecting.
or the Queens Brooklyn border is more of the Queens Brooklyn border, but we also put the trash in Queens. And so anyway, yeah, it got filled in. So it's it's a beautiful moundish area right now. That nothing like the dump it used to be. So anyone who's there doesn't realize that they are living or moving into a trash dump. But that's what that was. I assume it's safe. I assume.
Because nothing toxic is ever thrown out in the garbage.
I'm assuming that by now, the 40 years or
The forever chemicals that we covered on a previous episode, I'm sure that has nothing to do with the dump there.
I think the city's fine. I think
Yeah.
I think the city is doing a-okay. Everyone goes to the beach now. That's what I'm saying. It's become a really popular area.
Fantastic. The beach.
People are swimming. People are kayaking. It's like
water doesn't break
like
down anything.
Yeah.
Just having the salt water wash on the protective containers that are only things separated from the toxic chemicals. That's great.
Yeah. That's what that was. Yeah. The seagulls will come to play. Anyway, all that aside, why did I start talking about the dump? What did that have to do with my speeding ticket?
You went back home.
Just because I went home.
This is a speeding ticket story. The speeding ticket.
Right. I was giving. Okay. So I got a little sidetracked because what I wanted everyone to know is that much of the area to Rockaway is not even as thick as Long Island. So you could almost see ocean on both sides of some of the bridges. Well, definitely the bridges, obviously, but even some of the more landed areas, you could kind of see behind some of the houses. You could see the water, and that's true on either side of.
It sounds like a little barrier island or something like
that. It is
right.
Basically,
it's got water on both sides, a little sliver of land, just enough for a road and a couple houses on either side.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, for the most part, that's exactly what it is. With a couple of forks that create different neighborhoods or different areas, because they're not really neighborhoods, but they're areas of the Rockaways. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the way that's been built because of the seawall that is also on some of the areas that don't have housing basically to protect the road. So they built seawalls. It's straight. It's a straight jetty. It's not. There's no curves to it. You've got seawall on one side. You've got sidewalk on the other. It's a 2-lane. One lane for each direction. Little road.
I just see where this is going. Antoine's got the windows down, the top down, his hair flying in the wind.
I'm trying to say, you count down. You just count. You could literally just count down the streets. It's like Beach 67th, Beach 66. It's just straight away. Okay, people.
It's mesmerizing.
It's made for speed. It's designed for speed. That is how the city built it. It built it so that people could go on vacation in the Rockaways as quickly as possible. They made it as straight a shot as humanly possible to allow the cars to go as fast as they were designed to go. Now,
those speeding tickets, that's just a toll. That's why
times have changed. Okay. Cars are going faster on roads that were built for maximum speed. The government has not adapted. The individual cannot adapt. I have no power over how this road is maintained, what is done with it. I have no power to put up lights. I have no power. I try to vote in people when I did live there that were, strategic in their structural management when you got them.
They do make brakes, Antoine. They put brakes on cars.
And that's for me to use. That's up to my discretion, but it's not that, but the road is not, the government has not made this road for braking. So it's up to me to choose to use those brakes. But this road is not designed for brakes. It's made. It's right. It's made the need for speed. That's the way this road was designed. Okay. Now, since I was a kid, they put up a lot more signs, which is something I've complained about in my town. They're way more 30-mile-per-hour signs than they're used to in this roadway that is basically made for almost unlimited speed. They have, what do you call it? The traffic cams, right? Not traffic cams, but the traffic lights. Traffic lights are everywhere. And then now the city has traffic cams. Those cams report on your, Apple device. I don't know if that's Apple doing it or, their map device or what have you. And I usually took that as like, all right, this is a camera's coming up. Once you pass the length of the camera, then you can kind of, go about your day. And I was doing that for the most part, but then I got to this patch where I didn't hear Apple say anything. And I was like, well, there's no reason to go 30 miles per hour. There's no pedestrians on almost either side of this area. There is a sidewalk, but I mean, it's not. And
So
on
Antoine,
the one side is just seawall.
you
It's
hit the
seawall
nitrous.
protecting it from going to the ocean. Okay,
Antoine hit the nitrous.
I hit it. I fast and furious it up. Did the old Dom, falling behind it, and I just punched the button. I punched it, which is kind of more Star Trek reference, but I punched it anyway, and I got to the ripe old speed of 44 miles per hour,
Did it feel
40,
good?
44 to 30. Like,
There you go.
you could easily go 100.
And it's and probably a 25, right?
What do you mean 25?
It was 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, I
It was a
assume.
30 miles per hour speed limit.
30. Okay.
Mhm.
So 30, you went 44,
I went 44.
which, you're getting to the point where you might have to appear in court.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess if you get caught, certain thing. But anyway, it's a camera. So camera digs me, and they send you a nice old letter that I got here in Jersey to say that I have to pay the city some more taxation. Okay, so
There you go.
I get it. All right, I get it. I get it. Am I
Listen, you
supposed
got
to?
kids running around those little shore areas. You got to be careful.
Yeah, not no. Not in this. No, not where it is. And I can't even. They actually said that it was like some school zone. I was like, "There's no school over here." I know that for a fact. But anyway, the so, but look, I get digged, okay, and I'm thinking, wow, that
I'm
all right.
thinking, should I take personal responsibility? No,
No, at first,
absolutely not.
at first, that's how I felt. I was like, man, I can't believe I went 44 and a 30. This is not good. I mean, like, I need to be more responsible. I'm putting all this on me. And then I was like, wait, hold on a second. This is a straightaway. They've got no raised crosswalks, which the city is trying to implement. And if they care about the children in a beach area, that definitely seems like a place that maybe you want to start putting some of those raised crosswalks. They got none.
You are
They had
thinking
no
like a
cross in the
Jersey
area I was
boy
going. There were no
now.
crosswalks. Period. There were just lights that at corners, but no actual crosswalks. So I'm going to put that out there. The road is completely designed to be straight as possible. They didn't throw in cobblestone to slow down cars. They didn't throw in any kind of any car mediators whatsoever. The road is designed as it was back in the 20s. It is designed for maximum speed.
Maybe it's
And
designed for emergency vehicles to get by fast because it's probably an evacuation route during storms.
is that my fault?
I mean,
Is that my no? Is it no? But seriously, is that no? I mean, there maybe the emergency vehicle should have their own lane that allows them to that maximum speed. Maybe like a bus during traffic. Maybe there should be an emergency vehicle lane because at the end of the day, in your scenario where there is an actual emergency on this peninsula, traffic's going to be almost backed up on both those two lanes. So where's this emergency vehicle going to go anyway? Because everyone's in the road. So I don't know
okay.
about that one, but if that was one, I would have sat for a second, if I was in that town council meeting and I would have had to think. I'd have to say, all right, interesting point. And then I'm going to throw it back on you. Maybe you should create an emergency vehicle route. How about that?
If they have the room on this sliver of land.
Well, then maybe it should be one lane where you can go around traffic and you go, one of those like old country lanes. It should be like rural then if you want to do that. So then there's still two lanes. Hey, my point is, hey, sacrifices have to be made. Sacrifices were not made. This is all I'm coming down to. I'm going down this road and maybe it's not my fault that I'm easily able to hit a speed that is 14 miles or 15 miles an hour or over the limit that you've set. That's what I'm trying to say. You've set an arbitrary limit, and it's not that arbitrary. You set a limit that people are more likely if they are hit to survive. That's fine. But at the end of the day, if you want to protect those people, there are far more effective, and we know that there are far more effective means of doing so. The putting in impediments that don't allow cars to go or hit high speeds. So that way you don't have to rely on the driver to look at the speed limit to ensure that and then look back down at their speedometer in order to ensure that they are going the correct speed, which I think sounds a little dangerous to me if you're putting it that way. So I mean, we're just going to put that out there. Does it rely on the driver?
The constant checking of your speedometer is a distraction.
If it's 30 and you're in a place that allows you to go fast, yeah, you will.
I'm going to throw this out there. Because
okay,
Jersey has the shore area and it has roads that are notoriously slow for like they have very low speed limits,
Okay.
and they'll get you too. Like you can't go fast.
Yeah.
They're not dangerous roads. They're residential areas, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of traffic that goes through because it's the shore, and you do go through a lot of barrier islands. So I'm familiar with the setup.
Gotcha.
Um, it's a revenue generator. It's not dangerous because there's not enough traffic for it to be dangerous. There's not like a high fatality rate. It's nabbing all the people from out of town. It's generating revenue for the area. I'm not saying it's right, but they got you. They got you.
Okay. So anyway,
And there's no reason for them to put that other infrastructure in because they're not really saving lives with it because there's no real lives at risk because when it's populated, you can't go fast anyway when all the people are there visiting. It's
yeah.
you going in the off season
Right.
and they got you. They got you.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, once again, everybody, remember all you gun preppers? It's remember, government is still not your friend. Yeah, that's according to JP. Government's still not your friend. Uh Anyway,
Yeah, no.
all that
Oh,
aside, it got me thinking. What were you gonna say that?
no. Go. What did it
Okay.
get you thinking?
It got me thinking, okay, and it put me down a rabbit hole because I started to stew. When I stew, I gotta look for information. So and I was like, oh my goodness, how many times do I get on this pod, and especially if we get into capitalism or any kind of rants about anything like that, I'm always thinking, what is this word for government negligence? I ask it almost. I mean, if someone who's a long time listener, they know maybe every 5 episodes, I ask, I hit there and I say, what is this word for when the government does not take responsibility in a situation that they could have avoided and put that responsibility on the individual, which is an undue responsibility because the government can solve this problem. This willful ignorance almost but I wanted to know if there was an actual term. Like I was like, give me a term, a psychological, a well-researched academic term. Give me that terminology. And instead of researching around the internet, I said, wait, why don't I just ask ChatGPT?
Ooh, okay.
Welcome to another conversation with ChatGPT. Now,
Okay.
and then I thought, you're going to read. We're going to do a reading. You're going to read ChatGPT. I'm going to play myself. I'm going to ask the question. You play ChatGPT and you give that answer. And then,
My,
and
how
then
the tables have turned. Let's do
I
it.
flipped them on you and you were not expecting it. I could guarantee that.
I did not think you were going here. I didn't think you were going to do this ever. Let's do it.
I got wrapped into it. Okay. So, question number one. Remember, everyone, I was saying government responsibility. That's the theme. That's the theme of this ChatGPT. Is there a psychological term for having 100% of the responsibility for events not 100% in your control?
Yes, there is a psychological term for feeling 100% responsible for events that are not entirely in your control. It is called personalization or personalizing bias. Personalization is a cognitive bias where an individual tends to take full responsibility for events or outcomes that are outside of their control. This bias often leads to feelings of guilt, shame, and self-blame, even when there is no rational basis for it. For example, a person might blame themselves for a car accident that they were involved in, even if it was caused by another driver. They might think, if only I had left the house a few minutes earlier, I could have avoided this. This type of thinking is an example of personalizing bias. Recognizing and addressing personalization can be helpful in reducing feelings of guilt and self-blame and can lead to a more accurate understanding of one's roles in events and outcomes.
Jamie, what were the words that I used? What did I feel when I got hit with that ticket? What were the first? I was thinking, this is my fault.
Yeah, you
I
felt
should have not been going as fast. And you came in and you were trying to you were jumping on the pile. You were saying, you know what? This is your fault. And I said, no. Now I can say,
I still think it's your fault.
no,
But go
no,
ahead.
yeah, that's because you've been conditioned to do so.
Uh-huh.
We've already hit the first milestone. Now, here's the thing. When you're talking to ChatGPT, there's a reason I didn't just go straight out and ask the initial question, what is the government bias, called? You have to kind of warm it up. You have to start it thinking in your realm of what you're trying to have it regurgitate kind of back to you, but with more informed, not with more informed rhetoric or explanation. And this is how you do it. So you have to first say, is are what is does anything even exist when it comes to
Do you want to
when
know
feels that kind of guilt? Go on.
if you were going to? So I kind of understand what you're getting at in terms of you want the government to design infrastructure around what they want from you. So in
No,
this
no, no, not what they
scenario,
want from me. What is
well, they
probably
want they want you to go a certain speed. And
oh
your
yes, yes,
thing is
the royal you.
why are you enabling me to go faster?
Exactly. That's
And
exactly my
so,
question.
but to add all of these other features in that you're describing, I mean, at that point, they can control like go-karts with radio signals. Why not just radio the cars on this road and govern their speed or something like that?
That could be done. Yeah, that's a form of this. If you would actually be active, yeah, I'm fine with that. That's not the issue. The issue is that
Yeah.
none of that is ever talked about. That the issue is that that's not something the government's can do. This is just one aspect of it, but this applies to a lot more things. Now,
Because you're getting at like, why can a car, and this has always been the question, why can a
mm-hmm.
car go 150 miles an hour when the max speed limit is 55, 65, maybe 70 in Florida? You really can't go much faster than that in the US. So why are we selling people cars that can go double that speed?
Exactly. That's for marketing because basically the corporations have trumped the safety of the individual to say that I need a way to market my luxury cars, and that's with speed because that's what people want to see. And the government should have easily stepped in and said, that's absurdly ridiculous. You're going to cause so many accidents on the road, enticing people to go at those speeds. We don't have a single road in this entire nation that is allowed to post a speed of upwards of 100 miles per hour. You cannot make that car. That's a government mandate. But we didn't do that.
So tell
There's a
me,
reason we didn't do that.
why is it different than if you were to just take a glass and smash it against your head and you get cut? And you're like, why did you allow them to make a glass that I could hurt myself with?
I didn't say push this into the absurd. But here's the thing: is the converse could go the other way too. I mean, I could easily just say, if if they have speed cameras because they need to generate revenue, we might as well just put jaywalking cameras that you said every individual gets a ticket, and then we added their facial recognition so that we could send it to their last known place of address. That's a good revenue generator. We should just do that. I'm just saying you could push it in either direction. Doesn't mean that it's
I
the
just, I
main
mean,
point is any less true.
idea that you don't, you were on a straightaway. Now, listen, if anyone drives on the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey, I think the speed limit is like 65, maybe if
Yeah,
it's even that high anymore. And people routinely go in the 90s in the left lane.
yeah.
And
Well,
it is just a thing. That is the speed of traffic. Um, 80s, 90s, it's just what it is. It's they're breaking the law, every single person
yeah,
on
and
it.
it's only cool until the police start, stopping you
Yeah,
for it.
and then they'll stop you. And the
Well, they
locals know
could,
where the
but I mean,
speed
that
traps
why?
are and all
Yeah,
that
but then
stuff.
why give the state that nuance to say we're going to allow you to break the law, but but if we need to, we'll clamp down on it. But it has nothing to do with public safety. These are just arbitrary laws that we've set in place. That's basically that's an admittance of that. It's me that these laws you're setting in place are completely arbitrary and only to be enforced at the state's discretion, which means
That's
that
what
if I
it
just
is.
don't like you, I will
But
stop you.
I don't foresee obstacles, adding obstacles to the road as being a feasible answer to not allowing people to speed.
You could,
One, I don't
I don't.
even understand how you would deploy that on every road. And two,
Mhm.
once you hit a certain speed, you can't be hitting bumps all the time or slamming on your brakes every 100 yards or
Well,
whatever
no,
it
I mean
is.
you
Like,
wouldn't. Yeah, you wouldn't expect this on highways.
well,
We're
if
talking
you ever
about
saw it, Mythbusters actually did a really cool experiment where they
okay.
like drove around and they
Mm-hmm.
pumped the brakes, stopped, and they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to see what would happen in a traffic jam and
Mm-hmm.
how that action reverberates down. And you would literally come to a standstill if you had people braking routinely all the time. Like once you go, 100, 200 cars back, you're going to be
Well, I
you're going to be
mean, the light system, I would argue, already does that in the city. But the thing is, you could always come back and say you can automate the lights in the way that the city just refuses to do, like other countries. So I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying in terms of that. There are other ways in order
I think
to.
that
Well,
I think
first
the
of all, you're talking about main roads. That's the thing. All
I think
roads
the
in
answer is
yeah.
the roads are not big enough to handle the volume, and the type of roads that have that volume should not be in residential areas. Like
Well, yeah,
you
that's an
shouldn't have
argument that you would
one.
make.
It's difficult because you shouldn't really have one road feeding an island like that where everything's coming through. You probably should have like multiple bridges coming over.
In different areas, yeah, which are longer. So you basically, if you want to add time to your trip, you would take those alternate routes, but the time added may not necessarily be. It may basically equate to the time of just having sat in the traffic.
Like you shouldn't have major stems feeding these areas.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but these were not designed in modern times with
Yeah, but
modern
I'm just saying,
concepts. They
like,
were
I don't
designed at a time where the traffic was
that
less dense
I know I
and
get
less
it,
volume.
but that's what I'm getting at is that the solution probably has to be more systemic. I'm not sure adding cobbles to the road to jam up to like jam up people is going to like do it.
I didn't say, hey, look, I'm not an engineer. All I'm saying is that there is something to it, and I'm exposing it. I'm more in the philosophical realm. It's up to
Okay,
structural engineers and people who who've already figured out how to do these things in other countries. By the way,
that's fair.
yeah. So it's not even like we're talking about you know bringing a woolly mammoth back to life so that it fulfills a live action role in the next Mission Impossible. We're not talking about something like that. We're talking about things that we know exist and that are been chosen not to be implemented for one reason or another. It could be financial, so there could be other guidelines to it, but for one reason or another have been not implemented in this particular area. And I'm just pointing out, if you go down the rabbit hole, I just want to know what that was. I just want to know what that
Well,
exactly
because
was. Maybe not that in particular.
I've
There are other examples of it, but just
I've
the
driven down the
idea. Go on.
I've driven down the road before and where I used to live when I was younger, and I had speeding tickets. And either you knew how to time the lights, or you would speed in between lights to try and catch it, right? And it's very much like your choice to do that. I just even I'm having a hard time without removing the capability entirely or offering up a better way to channel traffic so that less cars are reaching their final destination more efficiently. I'm not sure adding anything else. I think people just look to game it either way. Like if you want to speed, you're gonna do it.
No, but there's a difference between willfully speeding and just gradually. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I guess if you can't gradually go above
The
60
difference
miles an
between
hour.
willfully speeding and doing what I did.
All right, I don't want to get too. Here's the thing. I don't want to get too bogged down in the speeding analogy.
Fine.
It's more about like my overall, because I've tried to address this with like garbage pickup in the town, like how it's on you to purchase a contract with a private garbage company so that they will take away trash that if you were to just leave in the streets, the city would then fine you, but the city doesn't want to take the
I hear you.
responsibility. Yeah,
I'm
it
teasing
goes
you to
back to
some degree.
more
I
mundane
agree.
things.
I agree with your higher concept. I
Yes.
think that if you were to build it from scratch in terms of the speeding thing, you would do it differently. I think the way that everything has grown and it wasn't incrementally changed, now we're in a spot where there is a burden being put on the people to just be self-regulating in that sense. And it's not perfect. I just don't know if you can incrementally change it now. I think you probably have to do something drastic.
All
But go
right.
ahead.
Well, I mean, it's up to the great great people of Rockaway. Uh, Either way, though, there is a solution there. It's just a matter of how it, you know, how hard are you willing to fight for it?
All right, let's go on with
Go on.
this.
All right. So let's go on to my second question. Is there a version of personalization applied from one person onto another?
Yes, there is a version of personalization that can be applied from one person onto another. This is known as externalization or externalizing bias. Externalization is a cognitive bias where an individual tends to attribute all the responsibility for an event or outcome to someone else, even when they themselves played a significant role in the situation. This bias often leads to blaming and criticizing others for things that are not entirely their fault. For example, if a project fails, someone who is externalizing might blame their coworker for not completing their tasks on time, while ignoring their own role in the project's failure. They might think, if only my coworker had done their job, the project would have been successful. This type of thinking is an example of externalizing bias. Externalization can be damaging to relationships and can prevent individuals from taking responsibility for their own actions and behaviors. Recognizing and addressing externalization can be helpful in promoting accountability and improving communication in relationships.
How nice is that? Externalization.
I mean, one
Okay.
could say you're doing that to the government, but yeah.
But the government is the people. The people can't do that to themselves.
So
That's
then the
not what
government
this
can't do it
is.
to you then.
Because that's a different government. That's a different government.
By the way, I'm loving this because when Antoine and I text multiple times a day, and when I do certain things with him, he will play this question game with me and this counter argument game with me, and it's frustrating sometimes. So I am loving just throwing this all back in his face right now.
You're doing a good job. I have to say you're doing it, and the reading too. I mean, definitely, someone can tell you've got young children. Your ability to emphasize it's definitely makes the story. Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to answer these questions. They're tough questions. You have to sit with them for a second. Okay, you have to sit with them. I thought though that this was a good place to start. I was like, all right, here now I've reached the foundation. This is what I'm looking for with ChatGPT. I'm like, we're here. This is a place where we can start talking about the government. We could be like, all right, now that we've got our premise, this is now we're externalization, not personalization. We're like, all right, now it's externalized. What how does this play in if you want to talk about an organization or an entity that is, sort of as systematic as a government? Okay. So here's the next question. Is there a version of externalization from a government perspective?
Yes, there is a version of externalization that can be applied from a government perspective. This is often referred to as blaming the victim or victim blaming. Victim blaming is a phenomenon where individuals, including government officials and policies, blame the victim of a crime or social issue for their circumstances rather than holding the perpetrators or underlying systemic issues responsible. For example, if someone is a victim of a sexual assault, victim blaming might occur if authorities ask questions about their behavior or clothing choices instead of focusing on the actions of the perpetrator. In a government context, victim blaming can occur when policies or actions are put into place that place the burden of responsibility for addressing social issues on the individuals affected, rather than addressing underlying systemic issues or holding those in positions of power accountable. Recognizing and addressing victim blaming is important in promoting a more just and equitable society, as it helps shift the focus away from blaming individuals and towards addressing the root causes of social issues.
Nice, right? We're moving along. I felt like we got somewhere there a little bit because at least now it's trying to talk about the government. It's giving me government context in addition to what the queries I'm making. So it's going to continue to think in a government vein from now on. Now we're going to skip a couple of these because
That is an
they
interesting
yeah.
prompt, by the way. I remember coming
Oh,
across it. There are people now that you can hire, and they're like professional chat GBT inquisitors. There's a term for it. I don't know if they're engineers, but they're prompters. Like they're
yeah.
professional getting information out of AI. And one of the
Mhm.
first things they say is, please imagine that you're like this, right? In the same way that you did it, pretend you're the government, and then you start asking your questions so that they have a lens to look through. So it is an interesting way to go about it.
Oh, cool. I'm glad I'm in the vein of the people who can charge for this. And we're giving it away for free. Tell your friends. Tell your
And
friends.
that's your free trial at Retraction Podcast. For more information about ChatGPT, please subscribe today.
So after going back and forth a little bit with it, I just came into once I basically did institutional victim blaming. I just wanted different types of words for that. Uh, uh Went into uh,
So the
to yeah.
victim blaming, I because you is that what the government does, or is that a term the
Well,
government uses to describe what others do?
yeah, you see that's why I had to keep that's why I had to keep diving because that doesn't feel completely right or perfect, because I feel like it's mixing. I think it's trying to give it to me in a government context, but it's mixing it with the like personalization. Even though what's funny is that in the example it used, now that I think about it, where it's talking about authorities not believing a victim of sexual assault, that's still the government. So it still gave me the victim blaming. It still had two examples of institutions that were engaged
It's
in
interesting.
versions of victim blaming, right?
That's such a human trait, though, to do that. I mean, and the government positions are made up by humans.
Yeah.
I think that's where I'm getting thrown off here. It's almost like, it's just
It has
another shape.
there's I know there's cultural. I know like we know this from colloquialism, like everyone. We know that there's cultural victim blaming, like where uh it again, it doesn't always have to do with the sexual aspects, because again, it's saying that there are numerous ways to actually to do victim blaming, but it could be something as not innocuous, but like the bullying, like bullying in high school, right? You could have an element of that. A kid's getting bullied and people are saying, well, why do you let the bully you, kind of thing. That's an element of victim blaming, but again, it's a type of institution, a school, or I guess if it's your colleagues or classmates that are doing it, maybe I guess that's a little different, but it would be in a similar setting, yeah, or a similar
Yeah,
way,
well, I
right?
guess what I'm getting, like, yeah, I think that you can do it within your family or with your group of friends. What I'm
Okay.
getting at, I don't think there's any fundamental difference between Joe, the family man, who victim blames his spouse, his partner,
Mm-hmm.
his kid, his friends, whatever it is, and then when Joe goes to work and victim blames victims through his professional life. Like, is that what the implication is? Is that this
No,
only occurs in a
no, they're
professional
saying
capacity and they don't do it in their personal life? Because it's very much that individual that did it, right? Or is it just the
mm,
protocols and processes that our institutions have
yeah,
documented to follow that
yeah,
inherently have this almost bias in the code? I don't know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I, that's a good one. I actually can't answer that. I'm not sure. Um, because I guess well, based on Chat GPT, based on what we've just read, maybe the one where the guy is a jerk to his family, that's more of externalization, and then once you get to victim blaming, that's just systemic.
Okay.
That could be
Yeah.
it. Actually, we might have just cracked it. Maybe someone listening was like, "You idiots! That's you just said it. That the difference is the externalization is for the individual, and victim blaming is institutional." But that's what I'm getting here. But you're right. I always thought that you could, because yeah, because you could apply it on the Joe Schmo at home, uh, scenario, uh that would be it. It's just victim blaming, but externalization seems to be the bridge. Um,
Okay.
and then I asked it basically. I was trying to have it think of the government not in terms of. And I'll read this because you're right. People might find these prompts interesting. So this is a type of prompt that. So I basically asked, is there a form of government externalization that is attributed to the government as a collective entity rather than the individuals that work in the government? Does that make sense to you?
Is there a form of government externalization?
Well, while you think about it, the what for the listener, the prompt that gets you back is like what I'm doing here is when I say government, I'm using government because I've had ChatGPT already say the word government, so it's in that name, and then I'm recalling to ChatGPT the previous conversation that didn't have to do with the government, and that's the externalization. So basically, I'm recalling for ChatGPT its earliest argumentation and combining it with its most recent, which then gives you a reset on its memory. Because the thing is, it has a limit to how many conversations it does well, while like when you're within a single chat. And if you don't remind it of uh, its earlier statements, depending on how the length of the chain, it will start to forget and it will basically start resetting. So these are ways that you keep it from resetting. So you're giving it prompts from early conversation and recent conversation continuously. So, and then you're adding to it so that it's always remembering this long chat. It's always recalling all these prompts as it rolls down.
And it does make sense. And I think you're getting to like one of the parts of the question that I just asked, versus the individual, which I have a hard time believing if you act a certain way in your professional capacity that you're not applying that some way in your personal life. But also the whole idea of, well, maybe it's not them, maybe it is the tools or protocols or structure they've been given to work within that already has that built in. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at here. So I can read the answer. In the voice.
You don't have
Oh,
to.
oh no.
No. I was just reading I wanted the listeners to just know the questions I asked in between.
Okay.
I don't want them to be here for 3 hours. So I'm going to slip through to where we finally get, because I ask
Thank
it
you.
about more willful ignorance because it's giving me responses with regard to that externalization that is done by a collective that represent the majority of the government as opposed to individual actors. And then I wanted to press it on willful ignorance. And then basically I get down to what I was really looking for. Drum roll. I finally asked it if there are synonyms for the above, which were institutional ignorance or systemic ignorance, because I didn't think that those were quite right. And then the final the final push is I went, are there any synonyms for that above? So it writes, Jamie, you could read the final.
Yes, there are synonyms for institutional ignorance or systemic ignorance that can be used to describe the same phenomenon. Some possible synonyms include institutional blindness. This term refers to a situation where a government institution is unable or unwilling to see or recognize certain issues or problems, often due to entrenched biases or institutional culture. Organizational myopia. This term describes a situation where a government organization has a narrow focus on short-term goals or interests and is unable or unwilling to see the long-term implications of its actions or policies. Systemic denial. This term refers to a situation where a government system or institution denies or refuses to acknowledge certain facts or information, often due to a desire to maintain power or avoid responsibility. Structural secrecy. This term describes a situation where a government system or institution deliberately withholds information or obscures the truth in order to maintain the status quo or protects its interests. Institutional complacency. This term refers to a situation where a government institution becomes complacent or indifferent to certain issues or problems, often due to a lack of accountability or oversight. These terms all describe situations where government institutions or systems are deliberately ignoring or failing to address certain issues or problems, often due to a desire to protect their own interests or maintain the status quo. That is an interesting part at the bottom, not the status quo, but protect their own interests. I wonder what it's referring to there. The individuals in charge or like the government entity department itself? Because then it goes back to your thing. Well, aren't those interests aligned with the people?
If it's so, again, it's because of the prompts, because I'm getting it to basically identify that, or at least identify with that there is such a thing as majority. So like government majority desire to protect their own interests would just be how the majority have structured a system, and it could be over time or it could be all at once, but basically how whoever continues to inhabit that particular area as the government is influencing it over time as a majority to to fill out these ends. And that's where it would say protect their own interest, because now you're protecting the interest of people who are most likely to or who currently inhabit that body of the government or as the government as a whole. Does that make
And
sense?
so it does, I guess. The caveat there is that if everything worked properly, that would be totally cool, I think. But the problem is that we have campaign finance issues and donors and special interests. So often those own interests of the people in charge or the people who have influence over these departments aren't totally aligned with the constituents, with the voting population, with the
Correct,
general
because
population.
again, that's when it's not aligned with the voting population, then therefore the government becomes this group mentality. That's the government it's referring to. The government as a whole chooses to benefit, and therefore, no matter who you elect, will universally, basically, not meet these demands of the people. Because because it's basically that endemic to the structure of the government.
So, Antoine, by the way, I saw that you thanked ChatGPT. Is that like your cover for when AI becomes sentient? You could say, I was always on your
How
side.
did you know that? How did you know that that's why I do it? Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we spend far too much time doing this podcast. That's
So,
really good.
yeah.
I thank it. I thank it a lot.
Antoine gives thanks to his toaster every morning. Um,
I'm a
so,
collaborator.
um, so all of these terms, now that we finally reached this climax,
Mhm.
in terms of your speeding ticket,
Yep.
which one of these terms would you apply to the local government where you used to live?
Well, I know which one I would. Is there anyone? Do you have any? If you don't have one, I will just go straight to what the one I believe it is. But do
Go
you
for
have
it.
a,
I
a
do
feeling?
not. Go.
Okay. I chose organizational myopia. Myopia. Is it myopia? Yes, it is
I don't know.
myopia. It is organizational myopia. Myopia? Myopia. This term describes a situation where a government organization has a narrow focus on short term goals or interests and is unable or unwilling to see the long term implications of its actions or policies. That do you focus on short term goals or interests? That's your revenue generator. That's the revenue generator you just spoke of. That's because they're trying to, right? You're trying to shore up finances to solve some short term goal, one would assume, because if it were about long term, I guess maybe you would take the same revenue and just save it until later. I don't know. I don't
Well,
know.
I would agree with you because then I think that goes into like the whole aspect of multi-generational goals, which our company or which our country just does not do, at least anything recently. Um, and something like I was going back to, and again, I'm not the engineer that would solve for this, but just having some experience with infrastructure in rural areas where you're experiencing these situations, you would need to really change things, and it would have to be pretty massive, and you wouldn't get that done very quickly, and it would go beyond the term of the politicians that are serving. And I just don't see anyone starting that project.
That's fair. That's fair. Hey, we might be in doom with regard to this particular infrastructure because I know well that there are other things that may take some time, but will not be as injurious because it's better than it'll be less time than the current procedures that are in place, especially when it comes to like road infrastructure, like maintaining roads or maintaining rail. Not fixing the brakes is not a cost saving measure that one should be engaging in just because the brakes continue to work. And everyone's like, well, you'll disrupt the rail. If recent events have basically concluded when it comes to people and government. But that aside, there is hope. I'm just saying that I finally have a couple of terms that I can use thanks to ChatGPT. Uh, Government myopia happened to work today, but institutional complacency, I love the way that sounds. So I might just run it, even if it may not completely encompass everything that I want. But I just love the way it sounds. I just feel like it adds in that lazy factor to the government.
I would
Um,
almost combine that
mhm.
because I feel like I would almost say that that's attached to all of these because it is rare that anyone is able to hold a politician accountable. And that's probably part of the reason why they get away with any of this other stuff. They are able to only focus on the short term due to a lack of accountability. Like
Yeah.
that is the enabler of all of these, unless it's getting to something else.
No,
But
no, I think you're right.
that's how I would see that.
So what would you call it? What would you say then? You would say that?
Well, it looks like they're all doing some form of institution, structural, systemic. So I guess I could take my pick of that word. And then I'm just looking to combine complacency and myopia,
Yeah,
institutional complacent myopia.
not bad, not bad, not bad.
There you go.
Let's get this guy $1,000. He cleared the board. That's it. That's it. But
All right.
anyway, I'm just saying that it's something that always bothers me. I may not even use these words in that way, but that it was good to know that there were terms out there that people have at least been researching that I could use to fill in the gap. So that's just another lovely lesson in ChatGPT, and also my anger with the current institutional arrangements. I don't want to get into another rant on another issue, but I've got a couple more issues so stay tuned to the pod because I'm reared up. I'm backed up of these issues as we go into the spring and summer, and now that the light is starting to shine on these areas, I'm starting to have a couple more gripes. It was bearable in the dark, but now once the light's shining, I'm like, we got to fix this.
Yeah, and we need
That's
to listen because Antoine's got to pay his traffic fines.
I got to finance these outlaw ways some way somehow. What do you got after all that? What do you have?
Ooh, I'll need to do a light one, I guess, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, yeah. I took up most of the air, people. I'm
All right.
sorry.
Well, then I'll do a fun one. Not no real. It may only take a minute. I found myself thinking to myself today, what is Elon Musk doing? And I ask that, and you might just have a very simple, quippy answer to this, but I'll just kind of like rattle off a few things that he's done recently, and I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I feel like sometimes he's doing these things for a reason.
Do I get to guess, or are you just asking the listener?
I'm gonna tell you. I want you to tell me your thoughts on this, but I don't know if you're even aware of these things. But
Uh,
this is what he's been doing
Can I
recently.
can I guess? Can I
What
guess
he's
what it
done?
is?
No,
Or
no, not why he's done it. I want to tell you what he's done recently because it's just weird.
okay,
All
okay,
right,
fine.
all right.
Go.
So he changes the sign on his building to say Titter instead of Twitter. He changes his name on Twitter to say Harry Balls. He placed Twitter's he replaced Twitter's logo with the Dogecoin dog. He banned Substack.
That's
He
good.
labeled NPR as a state-run media on Twitter. And not that I'm even upset about the conflation of the legacy and paid for blue check marks, because I don't care. But
Mhm.
why isn't everyone just getting free verification? Like you get verified for your email addresses. Why isn't everyone getting verified?
Mm.
So, and I get that's probably more of a revenue generator and easy to explain away with greed or whatever. But the other ones, like I just like, what is he really just like a child?
According to those who are closest to him and who have worked with him in the past, yes. The answer is yes. Wasn't there a documentary? No, it was some expose of former workers at Tesla when he was taking over Twitter, and how they said that he was basically this like huge man child that they had to keep away from the business in order to have it run and be successful. Do you
Is that
remember
all
that?
that it is? No, I don't. And I don't. I'm not that familiar with him other than knowing about his remit and the amount of power that he's accumulating. But this stuff is like so silly and crazy. I mean, I don't it's all like a big joke.
He's a man unchecked. That's basically
It's
that's what the
weird.
thing came down to. It came down to at Tesla, he wasn't the main guy in the beginning. There, he doesn't. I don't know if people even know that. I don't think he doesn't own 100% of the company. It's like some share because he was brought in. So he wasn't even at Tesla when Tesla was founded. Tesla was founded, and he came in at some point basically as like the new head. Um, and because of that, old guard was there, and he needed them. He couldn't just run rampant. He was checked. They were keep him away from the business, let him be the mouthpiece, let him go out and get our name in the papers, and we the engineers will worry about how these cars run and batteries and all this other stuff. Let him just be an idiot and either it was basically a double edged sword they were complaining about. But all I'm saying is that Twitter doesn't have that. So basically, they were saying that God help the people of Twitter because he's coming in and he owns more than anyone else. There's no one else to tell him no. That's a very dangerous place to be when it comes to running with Elon Musk.
Like Titter and Harry Balls. I don't even know what to say to that. This dude owns this enormous company, and it's just random. Like, it's not even like some practical joke day or something. Like it, I don't know. I'm having a hard time understanding why, other than he just thinks it's funny, and he's deploying these changes on a whim.
Could be that could also be the signs of a deranged person, considering how much debt he is in by acquiring this. So, yeah, or he just might think it's all part of the game. I don't, I don't pretend to know how billionaires think. We just know that they exist and they're not like us, and they pretend to be like us in many ways, but they are so far removed from the realities of anyone who's close to anyone that you listen or know right now, no matter how wealthy you think that person is. Unless they're a billionaire, which means you're technically a billionaire, you'd have no concept. Um,
It just seems
yeah,
like there's such a range. Like, because
it's crazy.
you see this again. I can't believe I have to say this stuff. This titter thing that he did, but then you see him label NPR as a state-run media, and like one is
Which is so
so.
dangerous. So
That's what I
dangerous.
mean. One is so silly, and then
Yeah.
one is so heavy,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm having trouble understanding what's at play.
Yeah.
And by the
I'm with
way,
you.
it's, I mean, and I even looked at it because I'm like, this, none of that sounds right in terms of NPR. Only 4% of their funding comes from federal, state, and local governments. And on average, less than 1% of its annual operating budget comes from federal agencies and grants. So, like,
Unlike other media, NPR doesn't lie. Because remember, everyone, what's the NPR logo? Thanks to viewers like you, right? That's it. That's what I'm saying. They say we're around because of viewers like you. It's the donation. It's to get the NPR tote bag that became so fashionable. And I hope every time someone sells one of those, percentage of the proceeds goes back to NPR. But yeah, that's the NPR. That's why you get the tote bag. That's why you do the drives, the funds, is because viewers like you support them. They're like, you know what? We're not state run. We're just not assholes.
yeah,
That's the they're like that's the difference.
it's like calling PBS state run, right? It's just like,
Yeah, same. Yeah, similar. Yeah,
it's, and again, it's not funny in that way, but he's doing these weird things. And I don't know. I'm just like, what is this dude doing? But maybe there's no real answer to it, and it's all guesswork. It's all speculation.
I mean, it's so. Here's the thing. Why the I feel like the question shouldn't is it really why is it that he is doing these crazy things, or why is he allowed to do these crazy things? The real question should be why are some members of our society both lauded for their acumen and ingenuity and genius, but also allowed to do such ridiculousness as this and still maintain that high pedestal of this person is a god, this person's so smart, this person's amazing. Even though if your average person, your coworker currently went on this started doing things equatable to this at work, what would happen to that person?
Can you
What
imagine?
would be the ramifications of that person's actions? That's all I'm trying to get at.
Can
Think of
you
the person
imagine?
you know doing this.
I'm I'm gonna. I agree with you 100%. Can you
Okay.
imagine sitting in a conference room? You work for Twitter. You work for Twitter, and you're sitting in a conference room doing some department's presentation, just a normal regular thing, right? Whatever you do, and then you're taking notes on Twitter letterhead notepad, and then your buddy next to you gives you a little elbow, and you peek over at his paper, and he scribbles out the W on the
Yeah.
letterhead, and he's like, "Titter," and you're just like, "Bro, I'm working here." Like,
But continues to
yeah,
do that with no ramifications whatsoever. Just everyone's like, oh, that's Tim. Tim's such a Tim's such a
like,
wild
what do you
card.
do with that? Or then he
It's
changes you change your name in your Outlook to Harry Balls. Like, I just don't
oh
like.
Tim. Tim is such a wild card. That was so weird. I don't know why he did that, but then, the day he stood up and on like the cafeteria table and started ranting and raving to the heavens about I don't know, God knows what, something. That was so weird. That was weird too. But both weird for Tim. Tim's still around. Basically, that's just
And
old
then he
Tim.
goes, and then Tim goes off on a rant in the cafeteria about NPR being state-run media, and you're just
Thank
like,
you. That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh Tim. Oh Timmy boy.
yeah,
So funny.
I don't get it. Anyway, that's that.
Well,
It
no,
was just,
but well, I to prolong this, just one more thing. It's not just that. It's not just his status as a celebrity, but it's also imagine having so much conspicuous wealth that you're allowed to fail on such a catastrophic public level and still be filthy rich. That's the other question I want other people to answer. It's a slightly different question, but it's still a question of the same. Well, how could we could sit in a society where average or Tim in real life is fired? Tim is fired. He's lost his home. He can't pay his mortgage. He couldn't pay the rent that month. He cannot. His credit got shot because he started putting on too much debt, and no one wants to help him. He sits in the street. He smells. He's deranged. He's talking to himself. But no one wants to bring Tim back to his former glory. That's not happening for Tim. Okay, that's Tim's world. But if Tim had been working at your office with $1 billion, Tim would have probably gotten fired and then just come back and bought the place because you cannot fail, even if you're an absolute moron at that level. And I think that's another question that we as a society need to ask ourselves. How is it that we have not just institutions too big to fail, but individual people who are so huge, there is no prospect of failure?
yeah, I it's an interesting one. I don't even know. It's not like you can penalize him at this point, but to allow someone to get to that big in the first place while we have so much suffering and injustice
Well,
at
yeah,
every
I
other
mean, yeah,
level.
there's a number of
Yeah.
different things. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I'm just trying to put it out there. That's how crazy that is. That's how it could do something that many people thought of as modern world altering, which is buying the biggest mouthpiece for a certain sector of our population, the town square of the people who are willing to attend the town square of the internet. How is one person allowed to acquire it and then be such an idiot with it and still receive there's just no consequences. It's not like the platform's
I think that's what
failing. It's not like
it
he's really losing. I mean, we don't know if he's losing money. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if he's losing money. No one cares. He doesn't even care.
I'm
Anyway,
just the jokes are so like lowbrow, and it's not even like he's he's not making them in conversation
yeah,
in some interview with a reporter. He's structurally changing his company around these jokes. He's deploying them on his tech stack. It's deploying. It's being published out into the world. He's changing his company as these lowbrow practical jokes. But then he goes off and says something super extreme, like NPR is state run, and I'm just like, what
yeah,
is? I go back to it, like, what is he doing? Like, what is that? I'm not overly sensitive to the jokes. Like, I don't care if that's his sense of humor. That's not what's getting me. And I know he's not doing anything illegal, I guess, in this.
yeah.
It's more of just like, what is this? Like, is this really? I'm kind of just asking, is he just really like this? Or is there something more going on?
Yeah.
Is he just really lowbrow humor, super loaded, and has extremist views and has no check where no one is going up to him and saying, we really shouldn't do this to the outside of our building, or you really shouldn't change your name to this, or there's just like nothing. He's just it
What
over there.
what's that saying? There's like a either like a modern colloquialism of like believe a person if they show you who they really are.
Yeah,
Kind of goes
yeah,
like
believe
that.
him. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. It could be it.
Yeah. So anyway,
Anyway,
that's not bad. That's not bad. It's a good conversation. I think that's a decent episode. What do you think?
yeah, we're good.
All
That was pretty good. I liked it.
right, cool. Jamie, tell them where they could find us.
Folks, we got new content out every week. Like, and subscribe to us on YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
With that, retraction out.